We've all learned many things from Ira. Here are some of the things I think that I learned from him. To exercise good taste in science, to make the fundamental logic clean and clear, draw a diagram to spell out the logic when you can, choose an interesting question, like yeast cell type, keep coming back to the center. A robust system yields much information over the years.
I thought I'd pass along some advice that Ira gave me. The first, you probably have all heard, that is study an established paradox. Find something that's well established as paradoxical, and if it's a real good paradox, then it's worth studying. Something's wrong, study that. The second piece of advice came about when the birth of my first child and a Gordon conference that I wanted to go to coincided. And he said, no, Jeff, family is more important than science. Second piece of advice was keep track of what Jim Hicks is doing, because Jim was the first person in the laboratory to set up working on yeast mating type. And it was a big problem. It had inherent in it a couple of marvelous paradoxes, okay? And he was doing this work by himself. And the key feature of that was understanding why Jim was working on this project and the nature of the project, and the wonderful spin-offs of that project would be a delight. And in fact, it was such a great delight that I folded my Lambda books and gave them to Gary Gusson. And the fourth piece of advice was that I fished too much. Happy birthday, Ira, for the opportunity, the advice, and the inspiration. And I will say that the only advice he ever gave me that wasn't good was that I fished too much. And I never got over that. In fact, it's only in the last 2 years that I've started to reestablish a little balance in my life that relates to the fact that, you know, a few times a year, you ought to go fishing.
Ira's advice for running a lab, get a bunch of smart people and let them do whatever they want, which is actually true in his case. His advice, he was never left the opportunity to tease me for being Canadian. Okay, and so on submitting to Cell, you know, I was trying to figure out how to submit to Cell, and Ira said, well, you need some sort of hook. You know, the journal tells you what it is. You have to sell. You need some sort of hook, and so you know, it's got to be like a Yiddish version of My Fair Lady. And I sort of sat there and was thinking about my papers in terms of that, and then Ira without pause, said to me, sort of like Shakespeare on skates. So he definitely helped out with me being Canadian.
In my first manuscript, I remember this like it was yesterday. He deleted and edited Wilson's purple prose. He explained every single one of these changes to me in painful, embarrassing detail. And then he did that over and over and over again.
Ira, on the final version of this manuscript, brought it back to me, and it had literally 4 different colors of highlighter on it, 7 different colors of ballpoint ink. There were pages that had been taped on with handwritten comments, continued on the back, you know, see over. And on the front of it, and every single page, you know, featured most of these elements. And on the front of it, there's a very small yellow sticky that said, Nicole, ready to submit as far as I'm concerned.
Besides the beauty of writing, which has become one of the great loves of my professional life, and for that I truly thank you, Ira, the things I came away with were the power of a clear idea, a clear model, the importance of mentoring students. And here Ira and I differ, because I now really cherish postdocs. I have very few postdocs compared to the number that Ira had. And I reviewed postdocs as self-guided missiles. Whichever way they wanted to point, he'd let them launch. But students were special, and Ira took great care, extremely great care, in making sure that the students really came out knowing everything they needed to know as vital for their future. And the main things that he gave us, the students, were confidence and freedom and time to make mistakes. And the last thing was just the sheer joy of discovery. It was just obvious from the beginning to the end that Ira loved science. And this was so completely contagious that you didn't even realize it was there. We breathed it, we ate it, we lived it. And I want to just say happy birthday.
The last story I want to tell, and I'll get it in less than 8 minutes, I hope, is that I have a little yellow sticky on my phone that I've had for 18 years as a faculty member. And I wrote it when I first came there. I wrote down what Ira gave to me as an advisor. And I recently sent him, not the original, because it keeps getting faded and I have to write new ones, but it's a really old and wrinkled one. And I wrote a new one, which is on the next slide. And these are what Ira gave to me, and that's what I want to give to my students. And I always think about whenever they come to interview is loyalty to us, interest in what we do, total freedom, and somebody else said that today, non-surveillance. He didn't come and go, what happened with that gel, what happened with that plate, what's going on? He would let you think it out. Let's see, off. Because the worst thing is to turn the headlights, the spotlight on your experiment before you even get to figure out what the lanes are, for example. He gave thought to our projects, he gave help, and he gave us all confidence, and I know Kathy said that too, and I think that's really important. And I think the last thing is probably he's been our cheerleader, and I want to thank him and happy birthday.
Douglas Forbes, who just spoke with Ira, and myself with Jeff Roberts and Michael Scheckman, were the 5 people in the world who were interested in lambda Q protein. And there were probably 100 to 150 people who came to the phage meetings. And that, in fact, is in some contrast to what I heard a few years later, where there was a scientific researcher for every base pair of the SV40 genome. And I think it was that sort of, small size that caused us to feel that there was nothing to do except for cut to the chase. And it also made me, at least, appreciate the interest and the interactions with other scientists, because there weren't all that many to interact with. And so I actually wanted to thank Ira for that, because I came here for my postdocs because of the interactions, and I really did enjoy it.
Ira took me at a time when I knew nothing about biology. I had never worked with a living organism, and he encouraged me, despite all of that, to pursue my interests. And it really was something I was very interested in, transcription for whatever reason. And he took the time to teach me and to encourage me, and has continued to do so.
I remember rapidographs and red ink on manuscripts and strunk and white, and most important, I suppose, training in how to think as a geneticist. Ira's lab, as I'm sure it is now, was then really a special place. The atmosphere was really crackling with excitement and electricity, and I had never been at a place where so many people, where essentially everybody knew what they were doing and why they were doing it, and what the question was and what kind of answer they wanted and so forth. And I really needed that in my